Hello, everybody. I'm John Vogel. We're with Verified Home Pros. Today, we're sitting with David Lemon, who is on overarching St. Louis and also is a real estate agent in St. Louis, and my brother James Vogel, who's a 20-plus year real estate broker who still does some real estate work but has come work for us. And I suppose we'll open right away to get some background on you two guys. David, you've got a podcast that's doing great, but really that's not the impetus for what got you into that or what's got us here, right? Because we're talking about real estate. So maybe you want to give a little background on yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah, so I've had my real estate sales agent license for close to 2.5 years now. Before that, I've been in the sales and marketing world, and even the sports broadcasting world before that. So it's interesting how everybody has these different paths to get into real estate. I had a couple properties before getting my license, and it was just an easy transition, something that I knew a little bit about, and something that I saw quite an interest in for myself. I wanted to learn more about housing law, even in real estate. And I think St. Louis is such an interesting place when it comes to housing, just because of our spots throughout the city limits, for instance, that have some crazy vacancies, and learning about the history of these things. And obviously being a realtor doesn't have a lot to do with those things, but it can expose a lot of knowledge within that. And, having that as a primary source of income and using that as a means to learn these sorts of things was exactly why I wanted to step into the industry. It's a convoluted way of saying I enjoy being a realtor.
Yeah, that's great. So, James, your path is the same but different. And so you were in real estate for really 20 years before coming here.
I left Vogel Heating when I was in Vogel Heating. I was a really long lifetime college student, and so I was really good at being in school but not really finishing school. Came back from Mizzou after about 3.5 years there, and got back into the union and was working with the family. And then in 1998, decided I just wanted to go in a different direction. Actually didn't get my real estate license until 2000. There's a story behind that. So I started buying houses with my father-in-law. Well, at that time, he wasn't my father-in-law, who would become my father-in-law. And did that for a couple of years, and I just wanted access to the information. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go get my sales class, right? I'm going to go get my sales license. I'm going to get it. And I literally went through 3.5 months of getting it at Merrimack, taking a class. And like the last day, as everybody's finishing up, like the teacher's like, all right, well, who are you guys going to go work for? I'm like, well, I'm going to just get the stuff, dude. I just wanted access to the information. He's like, you got to be with a broker, dude. So I literally took me like 2 weeks. I got my broker's license in 2000. January, I started Vogel Realty. And again, had no intentions of being a real estate agent. I wanted to keep flipping houses. I learned that liability and making money was easier being an agent. So then, again, getting out of it, I mean, really the best years in real estate were since COVID. I mean, the prices were going up before that, so it was good. And then really COVID was great because it kind of changed the way, again, you're 2.5 years, right? So you don't know what I actually created since COVID. I created the list the home on like a Wednesday, don't start showing till Friday. Don't accept contracts till Monday, give them answers on Tuesday. Because what aren't you doing then?
On Tuesday?
What aren't you doing on Sunday?
Oh,
If you don't have to turn contracts in until end of day Monday. Like again, writing contracts on the weekend. It's
Spending Sunday
It's something
evening,
that as
spending Sunday
agents,
evening.
it's just such an old school way of doing it.
It is.
And a lot of people still do it that way, and I think that's great. And they sell fast, and I've lost some.
That's a good
Not
way
writing
to,
them high enough.
Well, that's a good way to go quick about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was like I said, but those years, 20, 21, 22, they were great years. John and I have talked about me getting back into the family business for years, ever since I left, really.
Yeah, for sure, for 5 years, hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took a while, I think, for us to kind of find the right place for me here. And I was always looking for an opportunity to come back if it made it work. So
Awesome.
happy to be back.
I like that you touched on the remodel stuff because I want to get to that. But before we dig in on that, so David, so you said that you came out of marketing, some sports broadcasting. So your draw to the real estate business, was it homes? Was it the business opportunity? I mean, like I know, James, I've seen you do remodels and you love like doing the finish work, figuring out how to balance the fixtures and kitchens, things I wouldn't even think of. And I walk into one of your kitchens, I'm like, holy mackerel, like the colors are all right. I don't know how to describe it, or it's always on trend, et cetera. I mean, was that an interest of yours? Like,
Yeah. So I It was. The flipping side of things, the home remodeling side of things was something I had great interest in. It turns out I am terrible with my hands. I grew up in a family that was great. I grew up in a family of farmers, great with their hands. I don't know how I'm in my family.
Okay.
But I have had such an interest in it. And I realized where my strengths lied was in the relationship building, and the communication within the trust that's needed with a realtor buyer or realtor seller relationship, and the law that goes within that, and so much that is just unknown, especially to first-time home buyers, for instance, or first-time sellers. And there's a lot of trust that people put on you, and for some reason, I like the weight of that trust.
Okay.
And I like the relationship aspect of that. It's taken me a while to get there and realize that's what I'm good at. It started out wanting to, have the sexy side of remodeling and, learning how to be my own contractor and work with people in the industry. And I'm terrible, guys.
It takes a lot of effort.
I'm so bad.
It's a full-time job.
It's great that we're going there too. I want to get to some of that for sure.
I've had, you can't even count all of the clients over the years. I'm gonna remodel houses. I'm like, cool. You're gonna quit your day job because it's a full-time job to find houses, get contractors, organize it, be there.
It is.
I mean, you'd leave. The last couple of years, like I said, when I was ending it, I had a couple big projects going, and I couldn't be on site every day because real estate was going gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was, again, if you weren't on it, literally, you lost it. I mean, so you just had to be on top of it. And
so even though that was your business, even doing the remodel work was interfering with your realty work.
for sure it was.
Even on the same houses you were selling, is so to speak, right? Yep. Showing that's interesting. Very
I got to
interesting.
the point where I didn't let it interfere, and the projects would just take longer. And when I owned them outright with myself, it was easy because I just didn't complain to myself. But when I had partners, they would complain.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
No.
They're like, why? What? You're out showing houses that aren't ours? I'm like, yeah, well, what are you going to do?
So then are you remodeling some houses? Are you doing some flips and remodels, subcontracting it out, or are you just strictly then sticking with the agent business?
I am strictly sticking with the agent business. Now, I have clients that are part of the contractor sphere. I have great friends in the contractor space, but I leave that to them.
Fair enough.
I do leave it to them now, for sure.
Something I've hit on, or that you and I talked about, James, and I'd like for each of you to, just comment or if whatever, but you had mentioned that just getting a house from offer through contract sometimes can be tough in the business because there are so many new people in the business. No offense to the newbies in the room, but your point was, as you were even talking about coming back here, is like, holy mackerel, like there's so many, everybody's a real estate agent. There's even some funny TikToks out there where a guy's having a heart attack and the lady wants a doctor. Finally, a doctor comes in, can't save her husband, but says, hey, listen, if you're going to need to sell your family home, I'm a real estate agent, like after he pronounces him dead. So, yeah. And I remember you asking me, like, how do you coach folks who are in the business, who are just new to the business, to get through to a deal? And so a prime example of that you've told me that I thought was super interesting is you'd show a home to clients, and let's say both the husband and wife are totally ecstatic about the house, and you're walking in, you're seeing things, and you're like, you're not buying this house. Yeah. And you said, literally, you get into conversations of, well, then I'm not the one who's going to make an offer on this for you. Can you elaborate on that a bit? And then I wonder, being new to the end business, how do you get that experience, so to speak? But maybe.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's definitely, the trust factor that you had touched about me and all of my clients, it's a small boutique firm. I've done a lot of business over the years just by way of time, but it's always referred. I've never had a problem where clients are not happy with the services that they expect from me, right? And I am for sure, John, you had said, I did this a month ago. I was showing a house, and the house, I've never seen a house that has moved in so many directions.
Oh, boy.
And they made a comment, and they kind of kept walking, and I stopped them, we've got 6 more to see. Let's go. This is not the house. And they're like, well, let's look around. I was like, we've got other ones to see. They said, you're not buying it.
It's okay to jump to a conclusion that's a correct conclusion right away.
Yeah.
Before they fall in love with it, right?
Yeah, the bigger one, even for me, and I laugh about it all the time, and some of my neighbors may want me to move, but you can't make your neighbors move, right? So you're saying the house is awesome. You go in the backyard, and there's 20 dogs back there, or the cars are taken apart. Like that person can't move, and good for them if that's how people want to do it. But I always look at the house of I need to resell it, right?
So they have to resell it if you help them
correct.
acquire
Yeah,
it
exactly. Right? I
eventually,
mean,
right?
I'm assuming that they would use me, but yeah, I've always looked at it from that perspective, and it's every offer, everything is that. Even houses now, and when the market's, like I said, crazy, we set caps, and it's this is what it's worth for us, and if we don't get it, we don't get it, and you keep looking, and the right one will come. Yeah, I've had I have good friends with mortgage brokers and title company people, and they tell me that I'm like the worst agent because I talk people out of buying houses. But yeah,
I'm the same way. I'm the
great.
exact same way. I point out all of the inadequacies in a space,
Yeah.
and I'm like, hey, just tell me to stop if I sound like a negative Nancy over here. Like I'm trying to alleviate pains later.
That's 100%. I mean,
That's the big thing is I don't want you to call me and say, hey, there's water in our basement. It's like, yeah, you moved into a South City home.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. It's gonna be there.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So it's a great path to follow.
Any instances like a client falls in love with it and you're having to talk them off the ledge? I mean, I'm sure you've had those. We've talked about it, but what about you, David? Like we're like, now this client's in love with this house, and they should not buy this house. Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, luckily I haven't had clients want to buy a house that should be condemned or something like that, right? Unless they're a flipper, of course.
Yeah.
But I have had many instances where you can smell like either some mildewy or black mold even sometimes, and clients are like, no, I can take care of this. And it's like, you are not a contractor. Yes, you might have the financial means to do so, sure. As long as, that's my thing, as long as I am as transparent as humanly possible, I'm doing my job, right?
I would agree.
But that's the one thing it took me a while to gain the confidence to do, maybe, was just to be blunt as humanly possible with clientele, which is one of the reasons so I'm with Garcia Properties as my brokerage. Jennifer is my broker, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person.
Yep, I've always enjoyed working with her.
They just care about the city, especially because most of what they do is within the city limits. I'm in Mid-County as well, but also do a lot of work in the city. I joined them because I was part of a mentorship program, and I had somebody that worked alongside me, and we were partners. And this person had a background in construction, and that's kind of what I wanted. I knew what my strengths were. I didn't know a lot of the construction side of things, and I figured, if I could do that, then the later part of my career is going to be much more manageable, and that's exactly why I chose to go with them.
That's great.
Yeah.
So St. Louis, I mean, each of you, you've got a podcast on St. Louis.
Yeah.
So obviously you're in love with the city. I mean, we've been here
too
our
much.
lives too. Yeah.
Sometimes a little too much.
So as far as real estate goes, I mean, what's popping? What areas are hot? Obviously, or I can say obviously, but this is how it always feels to me, is that when you're working with a real estate agent or broker, they seem to specialize in certain areas. And James, you were Webster Groves, other areas too, but it seemed like you really knew certain neighborhoods. Have you got a niche market that you're in, David, as far as that goes, and you want to talk about it a little bit and the city in general?
Yeah. Like I said, so I mostly work within Mid-County and a lot of the Central Corridor in South City. I'd say, Brentwood, Richmond Heights, Maplewood is probably some of my bread and butter. And then Lindenwood Park, Clifton Heights, Tower Grove South, North Southampton, Shaw, areas like that. A South Central Corridor is maybe how you would say. I work with a lot of stone foundation houses, which is what I was talking about. You're going to have moisture in your basement. That's the way they're meant to breathe. They are built specifically to breathe. Yep. Concrete foundations don't do that as much anymore. So you're gonna. I really
used to it.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
And that's the thing. As long as you're used to it and understand why it's doing that, you can appreciate what you have.
Right.
I almost appreciate it more. I almost want to live with a stone foundation structure sometimes.
I have that.
Yeah.
It does get wet.
Yeah.
3 sump pumps, and if they're not working, you're in trouble. It keeps it dry because they're really going nonstop.
They're working.
Yeah, they work for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Everybody should put drain towel and sump pump systems in their basement.
Oh yeah, everybody.
Right? I mean, if you can afford to do it, put them in there.
Yeah,
Especially if you're going to finish the basement over. I mean, you can't. Should not do it without it.
Yeah, especially with the forecasts of what's supposed to happen with flash flooding over the next several years, as people say. Yeah.
Well, we've certainly had the water recently to back that up. So,
Yeah.
how's it holding up, the neighborhoods? I mean, property values holding steady,
Yes.
interest rates tearing it down. Like, how's that
So,
looking?
Weirdly, as far as interest rates, they've held at that like 7 number for quite some time, over half a year now. They've just been holding steady. And so at the beginning of this year, we saw January, February really slow, March and April even kind of slow comparatively to years prior. When May hit, I think everybody, this is 2024, I think everybody had this idea, oh my gosh, interest rates might be this way for a long time. And May hit and it went gangbusters.
I'll be darned.
Because, it gets to summer, people are moving school districts, people are moving jobs, the contract work is up, school is up with all sorts of things. And it went gangbusters. So if you bought in January or February of this year, you might have found some like hidden gems. But things are going 5-10% over asking still, and we were just talking in some cases 20 to 25, which is
really,
but that's really only happening in very, very move-in ready homes for the most part, in desirable school districts, desirable neighborhoods, etc. But in that mid-county area, like I was talking about, Richmond Heights, Brentwood, Rock Hill, Maplewood, right there is especially going over asking very consistently. And I don't think it has dropped for quite some time now.
Is it just inventory? I mean, that there isn't enough of it?
I would say, there's more buyers than there are homes.
Yep.
And people wanting to sell. And I agree with you. Like the interest rate is crazy. I thought that thought you'd lose buyers. I mean, I had them as it was going up, and I figured, and dude, people are making more money now. I mean, people that get out and work, they make more money, and they realize that rates are going to come down and they need to move, and they have the financial means to do it.
Well, certainly home prices won't come down when rates come down. I mean, that's going to be more upward pressure. So if you move now and if rates do come down, let's say end of 24 into 25, you could refi and maybe you'd be looking back, like you said, the January thing, you found a hidden gem that has gained in some value. I don't know. It's hard to know.
No, that's the goal, right? That's the goal, is to think 2025 rolls around and maybe we're going back down to like high 5s or something like that.
Wow.
Will it happen? Will it happen? I don't know.
Right.
I very much so doubt we'll ever see a 4 number ever again.
I had so Vito Granata, right? So he's the mortgage broker that we've known. His family was friends with John's wife's family, and was talking to him. So people, I'm here, just people like myself, that you've got means and you've got money to go buy houses and stuff. You're actually paying higher interest rates than people who are first-time home buyers and are buying less house, right? So something with more interest, higher rates, more money is higher rates. And the theory is that the banks know that you're going to refi it out as the rates drop, and they're going to gouge you now. Like literally, that's how it was described to me. It's amazing. So
it's interesting.
It's interesting.
You're going to have the means to refi too. So
correct.
Once
you're in the systems now with the good brokers, I mean, it doesn't take much to refi it. You know, it's easy.
And it's almost they've pushed up some refi fees whenever rates have like dropped, obviously. But right now, fees for refiing is so low because who's refiing?
Yeah, right.
Unless they're doing like cash out.
That's exactly right.
Unless they're doing
like
cash
deal.
out refis or something.
Yeah, who's refining? Who would refi out of a low rate into a high rate? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
So we touched a little bit on remodels and flips, but maybe this would be relevant to folks. Okay, so you've been sitting on your house because rates are low. You want to do some improvements around the house. And this gets, of course, to the crux of Verified Home Pros, helping folks to understand the contracting business, the home ownership business, how to interact in these circumstances. So I'm not going to ask a trick question. There's probably one answer. But I want to do something in my home that's going to provide some payback. Obviously, HVAC comes to mind first. Is that what you guys were thinking? Probably not. It's not what I ever hear.
Here's the thing, though. It's becoming a little bit more apparent. It's becoming more
Good
apparent
heavens.
to home buyers.
Yeah? Okay.
They'll see a carrier system in somebody's basement installed in 22, and they're like, "Holy crap! I don't have to do that now." And it's becoming a lot more apparent to buyers. And I'll say the biggest thing is, TikTok and Instagram for new home buyers is, what are the things I should be looking for? The health of the home is obviously the structure, but then what are the guts doing?
Mechanicals, right?
And I think that
Roof.
yeah,
Yeah.
big ticket items, sewer line, what have you. People are becoming more aware of those things because of these vertical video platforms. So I think when people see those things, I know we maybe laugh about it in the future. Like, you're not going to get your money back by installing a new HVAC system. You might nowadays. You might.
I mean, go ahead. I have an opinion, but I want to hear yours is more important.
Well, I mean, I've always felt like you had mentioned, like it's there, so you don't have to do it. So that creates a value and substantiates the price that they're asking, right? Because most people are like, if they feel like the home's overpriced, and then you got to put an HVAC system, and now you're totally discounting everything that
They're
needs to
taking that
happen
right
with it.
off.
Yeah, correct.
And that's cash out of pocket rather than alone.
100%.
Yeah.
Any conversations ever with clients like the op cost of a home? So some of the systems that we do can save $100 a month. I mean, if that can go on no payment, I mean, doesn't that translate in buying power for the home? And I don't know that anyone is having these conversations. I've never seen it or heard it. Do you guys do? And so let's take HVAC off the table, but the ownership costs on homes. Does anyone conversate about ownership cost when they're buying houses or selling houses? Is anybody incorporating that into their value equation? Is that making sense? Like a commercial building, they'd rate it on how many KW it consumes just to operate the business out of that building. Certainly, if you can save $100 a month on your the operation of your home, be it LED lights or some home automation or HVAC or a building envelope that is tighter, that doesn't require as much money to be put in, all of that money goes straight to the client's pocket. And that's family vacations. That's or any conversations like that had. I'm not trying to call you guys out that you aren't doing it. Is anyone doing that? I can tell you, it's hard for us to translate anything from the person that you're interacting with to replace a system like that or do an improvement to take it over that next line into value for a purchaser. It feels like it just goes to zero. It's frustrating, maddening actually, when you're in the business because we kind of know better. I don't know if I'm getting it right. So
I did not have that much experience with it. I feel like this is something newer. I mean, even all the Ameren rebates and stuff, that's the last 2-3 years, kind of how that's going down to where when I was doing it full time, nobody was talking about it. I mean, we for sure 100% noticed when systems were old in situations like that. So I don't know, again, with your experience these days.
Yeah, it's again, it's becoming more apparent to people. It's definitely something I touch on a lot. Is you put in, you get out what you put in, right? Yeah. But when it comes to efficiencies in a home, investment wise upfront, I'll tell you what, realtors aren't really talking about a lot of that stuff. And if you as a realtor are bringing that to the table with whatever listing you are working with, that is something you're gaining trust immediately. I think realtors can do a much better job. Maybe I'm like losing, competition. Maybe I'm gaining competition here by saying this to other realtors who aren't doing this. But that is a leg that you're getting up on somebody else by throwing this in your potential clients' faces and saying, hey, I have a whole list that I bring to my listing appointments of updates that you should make where you're actually going to get your money back. Have like a cost analysis and return analysis of certain areas of the home, certain products, certain programs within the state of Missouri, certain national programs. It can be a lot. Yeah. And I do take up a lot of people's time by doing that, but I don't know. I feel like being a lot more thorough is better than being not at all. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Is that's something you've got on your website? Is it something that's just something you bring along? How do you proliferate that to your clients?
Yeah, so I bring that in person. I'm still pretty old school. I like paper.
Yeah.
I still like paper.
Yeah.
I bring it with me everywhere. I have multiple. Now these are stock pieces of paper too, so you wave them around.
Oh,
it's like
man.
a fan. You
It's
know,
like heavy. Yeah, that's awesome.
I pay for this stuff.
Oh, that's great. That's great. People know it too. As soon as they see it, they're like,
I sling it down on the table and
this
makes
is
a
it.
sound.
Oh, that's awesome.
No. It's also something interactive and something tangible goes a long way. I have a whole grandiose theory about how the world is going to go back to some analog things, and I think people are going to get sick of like a digital thing, like AI technologies are going to take over. It's something.
This is
sure.
before AI kills us all or
Yeah,
after. I'm
sure.
not-
Yeah.
You know, we've all seen Terminator.
Yeah, we all know it's going to happen.
Which one? Yeah. So, what would you do?
But I think there's still many, many parts of us as humans that want those tangible things.
Yeah. I like that. I'm just going to stick on this one because it's something I have experience with and that you guys would have shared too. So we don't do a lot of work with brokers when it comes to contract time. There's an issue with an HVAC system because our business is literally focused on the comfort side of the business. And so the way that we design our systems, we aren't trying to be the low price guy. We're not trying to be a box swap HVAC. We're trying to be the HVAC company that provides what we think is the product, which is comfortable air, healthy air in your home. And so, to get there, it's generally not just the cheapest system. I have felt, and maybe I've got this wrong, but I'm going to try to pin both of you guys down a little bit. I'm working with an agent, and what's standing between the offer that's been signed and them getting paid is the closing. And all they want to do is get to the closing. And if it needs a furnace in the middle, they just want like path least resistance. What's the cheapest furnace that I can throw in that house? It's how it feels to us, and so we don't go after that business. Am I seeing that right? Am I just jaded because or tell me a little bit about what your experience has been, and then hopefully some of the good advice you're giving your clients on the buying side when that's happening. I hope that I'm making sense.
Sure.
What I'm saying. So
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I make it a big point, very similar to what you do. Of again, talking point: pay for what you get. Now there are some companies here in St. Louis that are very high priced that sometimes sub out work, and you're not going to get consistency.
I agree,
Right?
completely agree.
And consistency is something I want when I'm referring people to certain contractors or certain business for certain things. But you have to. I think, especially when it comes to home ownership, I make it very, very well known to my clients that if you are going with the cheapest option, you're going to get the cheapest option. That word "cheap" means cheap. All right. It's like delve into the phonetics of the word.
There's only There's only one way to get there, right? You have to save costs along the whole line, which means something has to give.
Yes. Or you're working with pieces of machinery that have parts that are from different places in the world and don't do well communicating with each other, right? Things like that.
Totally possible.
And it's our job as realtors and as stewards of real estate in general to make sure that you are paying for quality. Quality goes a long way. It goes way more than just saving a few bucks on the front end.
We did. I'm thinking of a story, and this happened, I think, a couple times. So back when I first got into it with flipping houses, John and I had done some together, right? And he's owning a heating and cooling company, and we literally used other people because it saved money. And we always had to pay Vogel to come back and fix it. It was like every time. We did like 3 times in a row. I'm like, okay, we're just going to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Factor in it's going to take more to do the HVAC. Get the people out here that can do it right. And and that is, you're absolutely 100% correct. It's everything. It's who your electrician is, the plumber, whatever. You definitely get what you pay for.
It's so funny. One of my grandfathers had that ideology for his entire life. You get what you pay for, and always spent for kind of extravagant things within his means. He was a mechanic. Again, I don't know how I am terrible with my hands. I'm mechanical on one side, farmers on the other. But
Practice?
yeah, probably practice is what. Like honestly, that's what it is.
Maybe, I don't know.
You're 100% right. It's just because I was lazy.
No, I don't say lazy. But
No,
anyway.
John, you're right. Let's be very fair. But I have so many of his trinkets and toys and tools and pieces of clothing and whatnot that are all his from ages ago. I have very little of anything else from my family, but I have so many things of my grandfather's because they've lasted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
I used to resole shoes, you know. I mean, there were companies, there was a shoe place when we were on Merrimack Street, right down the street where they'd resole your shoes. I mean, I'm sure that happens, but I would never think to resole a pair of shoes. So anyway,
Yeah,
you know,
we're in
things
the
were different.
cobbling center of the world.
Yeah, that's
in
right.
St. Louis.
That's right. So same line of questioning. I think you guys hit great on the topic of value and appreciate that. So any advice, and James, maybe you take this one. So someone's coming home, they're going to look at a home, and let's not make it HVAC, let's do roof. And there's a roof inspection and there's an issue where there's going to be some credit given back or they're going to address a specific issue. How a client can interact with their real estate agent and yet be able to take that long-term, how to manage the situation in that you can take into account you're getting some credit. You've made a decision to buy a home. Let's say there's X giveback. It's $10,000. I'm not sure I'm getting it right. I'm trying to get some examples. You've got this money to burn. You could fix the problem for $10,000, but that just gets the deal closed. How do I, as a home buyer, make sure that I can make a long-term decision when I'm up against a contract date on something that's been found? Are you going to just take a credit and hold it, take ownership of it on your own? Are you stuck in some instances on inspections where you have to address it before the house will close? And then how do you make a good long-term decision when you're up against that deadline? I'm kind of pressing you guys because we have agents, we're talking about buying a home, and then things that are contractor related for someone who's going to be a long-time homeowner. How do you navigate that space in a way that is great for the buyer, if that makes sense?
For sure, your contract timeline, I think, totally affects how we're interacting in that situation, right? And so if you go through getting under contract, you start your inspections. Let's say you're a week later, you're doing inspections. You're still closing in 30 days. You get your inspections, you turn them in. Well, you've got 5 or 10 days now. Some people even cut that down, and really, I guess now not many people are even doing inspections anymore because you got to waive them these days because you won't get the house if you have inspections in there.
You can't get the deal.
So back in the old days, many moons ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, it's so again, you're against the gun, right? And sellers want to give you less, and buyers want more. I've always felt like credits are the best way to do it because again, sellers will hire the cheap. Right, yeah. They're going to downplay what the cost is, hire the cheap, and do cheap work. And if you can afford it, I would take the credit, and then do the work. And you'll even be surprised. Some gung ho buyers tell you they're going to do it, and a couple years later, it's still not done.
Right.
Like you go to sell, like I thought we talked about the roof. Like, well, wasn't that a big deal? And like, it wasn't leaking. So again, I think it's always hard to get people to spend money on things that they don't see true value. And we joke, kitchens. Let's remodel some kitchens. That's where all your value's at.
Right.
And again, that's then this conversation, right? Where is the value and what do people see?
Are there instances where they could do the improvement and roll it into their mortgage? I think that's a part of the deal is, so if money's not as cheap now as it used to be, but when money was cheaper, okay, I close on the house. Oh, I've got this $10,000 credit, but not really. It's not money. I didn't get the money. It just lowered my payment. And when it was whatever, 3% interest rate, what was it, like $15 a month or $20 a month or something over 20 years? You would
manage their true closing costs, or at least I would. Mm. And right, you know where that cap is of what kind of credit you can get, and I would maximize that credit to keep that cash in their pocket at closing.
So they get the cash.
So you bring in less cash to close.
Yep.
And that again, there are times where you would go over it, and there are times when it was extreme, and then we would delay closings at times. I've done it to where we would get the work done, and we were able to manage the work. And there are times where we've had systems put in, and they've wanted better systems, and you pay for that upgrade. I mean, I've had that conversation over the years to where, a bad heat exchanger. Okay, well, it's cheaper to replace the furnace. $1,200, I can throw this in, and I'm like, whoa! Like, what if we gave you some money and you put a better one in? I'm like, literally, I've done that over the years.
So then, can they take the credit back? And then, in a nutshell, we can talk semantics, but that it rolls. In other words, they're able to finance the improvement because they get the cash back. That if they do actually do the roof like they said they were going to do, they can put that money into the repair work that needs to be done and still have that rolled onto the mortgage. I mean, I think for me, when you take a big improvement over a 20-year period of time, I mean, it has to really get big before it's consequential on a mortgage, if that makes sense. Sure. Am I getting it right? I don't know that I am because I don't know the business.
No, that's a big point of contention right now, is roofs in general. So with insurance is a big play in this right now. Over the past year and a half, it's really changed. There's several ways I have, let's say, buyer side, for instance. Several ways that you approach an older roof. So say insurance companies see a 13-year-old roof on a house, they're going to increase your premiums like crazy. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be that 15-year-old number that your insurance premiums. But anything over 10 years right now, insurance companies are just going to push your premiums up. And when you're going into a contract negotiation, so after the inspections, you're in the inspection resolution period, you can have a discussion with the sellers and say, hey, we know that because the roof is significantly old, it might not be in the worst shape, but there is certain damages that our inspector has seen. Rather than us asking for a specific credit in cash to close, we would actually like a new roof so our insurance premiums can go down and you save significant portions of money on your monthly payment because your insurance is bundled with your mortgage payment. Oftentimes, some places it's not, but pretty much all around St. Louis it is for the most part. And then you make the claim, I would like you to specifically work with a certain group of roofers so you can get that quality as well. You can go back and forth and get certain quotes from people, but as long as you make the suggestion, and anything is negotiable within means.
Right.
But anything is negotiable, and that's happening a lot right now. Anything over 15 years for a roof, oftentimes people are replacing them on the seller's side right now.
And insurance has been, we were talking cost of ownership, and I didn't even bring up insurance. So for sure, another item that you can help a buyer understand, like what their legacy cost of that purchase is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because that's if you're getting a quality roof, mind you, getting architectural shingles and you have a large footprint, you should be able to get a bare minimum of 15 years out of it.
Right.
Most people have 20. They have 10-year warranties. Some people even have 15-year warranties, but it's mostly 10. If you're not getting at least 15 years, 20 years, you should be getting out of your roof. Honestly,
I think they stopped. I think the roofers, even the companies, didn't they stop doing the years, right? Because you would have some like, oh, it's a 40-year roof, and you're like, it lasts about 20 years.
Yeah. Oh my
Like,
gosh.
why are we calling it 40 years then?
Some factor of that.
Like, well, we had one instance where it lasted 40 years, so it's a 40-year roof for that one time.
That's great.
Exactly.
So you brought up something that I would have thought you're wanting the home. And so in a nutshell, there aren't going to be inspections it's not inspection contingent. You're still doing an inspection then just for information, or is it like buyer beware? I mean, I almost feel like, okay, but I'd still like to have it inspected so I know what I'm up against on my nickel. Obviously, it means if we find something really bad, I suppose there isn't a darn thing I could do about it. Or can I? I mean, could we elaborate on that? Or do you just say, if you're jumping off the cliff, just jump and hope for the best?
I think some situations with the amount of offers going in on properties, you're waiving inspections. I mean, it's getting to be very common.
I'd say 2021 and 22, you're often waiving full inspections. There are still times where you're waiving full inspections. I'd say the majority of the time you're finding some, partial inspections or inspection contingencies saying that we will do it for informational purposes only, just like you were talking about. Or saying we'll only back out for items that cost
no single item.
The big ticket item.
Below $5,000 or something like that. We won't back out for anything below that.
Right.
You're seeing stuff like that.
That feels a lot less, not circumspect. It's not the word I was looking for, but more objective, less subjective too. So like now you're nickel diming the seller.
Yep.
And if it's a big ticket item, like everyone would know as a matter of fairness, if the house is going to fall down in 6 months, you should not close on that house. If there was a way to know that, right? And so then same lines, I do the inspections. Let's say we did, and I'm wanting to do it because, of course, this is just going to, I guess, to some extent, I don't know that would extend your closing date, though. I want to do an inspection because if the building needs a roof, I want to tell my financer right away that I want to set aside some money to do that improvement. Are you able ever to capture money into the value of the house for something you're going to do and finance it right there? My point being, having it on a mortgage. I mean, being able to, again, if rates come down, you can buy an HVAC system now and take 60 months to pay for it. Or if it's brand new when you buy the house and you're doing a 20-year mortgage, you've got 20 years. I mean, the cost of ownership is almost inconsequential because the money is cheap. I'm making these things up, but is it? I mean, I don't know. I think about when a person builds a home, you're going to do a construction loan, and then that's going to get rolled into, a final mortgage. Are there any ways that you can pull improvements forward if you know something has to be done when you finance the house? Am I asking that right?
Yeah, you are. I mean, so for sure there are loans out there. The first one is, does FHA still do what is it, 203B?
Yeah.
Is that right? Is it still? I think that's what it was called.
Yeah,
it's
it's 203B.
Right, to
I'm
where
pretty sure it's right. Yeah,
I can't remember. Was it 203K? Anyway, so
you're on the right. You're on the right line.
So there are definitely programs out there that were designed to do that. I think that the sale a lot of times, if you're not preemptively having that conversation with a lender, you almost don't have enough time to do it from, and let's just say the 30-day close, right, to where people can't pull it out. So again, I haven't had a lot of that experience. I mean, again, I've had people who have bought homes with that program, again, that was designed to, you're buying it at X and we're leaving this much money aside to make the improvements, and that rolled into your mortgage. I mean, that for sure. I mean, I found the best way to do it is, you use a lot of the small local banks. And if I've got a connection with several still that, again, if I was going to go buy a house, that's totally how I'm doing it. But
Yeah,
not
you'd be
everybody's
a prime
going to buy
example of
houses.
that.
Yeah, but not everybody's going to buy houses to renovate them.
But
right?
you
I
do.
mean,
But
it's
that
not-
would be a
it's a
short-term
completely
loan that would be refied though when the work was done,
correct.
because that's bigger work. And that's what I'm kind of picking at, just to kind of get a feel. Do people have some flexibility when they run across something? I mean, great point on the roof. What if you still love the house though? And you just love it, and you're putting this money down, and you could afford the payment if it was in the mortgage, but you're not going to be able to do a $40,000 roof, 2 months after you make this purchase. What do you do? Oh, I'm just stuck with the old roof. Oh, I can't buy the house. I don't know. I don't want to go too far down the road. I just want this to be relevant to contracting, have, content that is interesting, and maybe thinking about something people haven't thought of when they're buying a house or doing work around the house, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does. I've actually. So it's interesting from the lending side of things. You're talking about that FHA 203 product, and it's so competitive still that you're not running into a lot of successful purchases for single family homes, mind you, that are anything but conventional loans.
Correct.
And you're not going to find a lot of that because, an FHA inspection process, VA inspection process, you have to check off certain things.
Right.
Sellers see those things and
They take the other contract.
even if it's less price, it's less price.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, okay. So we were all talking about South St. Louis City. You were saying through the Central Corridor. And I thought that the team brought up a great thing that would be interesting for you guys to kind of hit on is historical homes. Do I get in instances where I'm looking at a home that's labeled historical, or I'm in a historical district? Are there things to look out for? Like, so if I ever want to change the windows on that house, or I want to change something on the front of that house, I'm like, that's the look, or I'm stuck in this way. Is that, I want to say buyer beware, but maybe just you could chit chat about specifically about St. Louis and different areas where those are considerations.
Yeah, I'll go first. If you're familiar with my Instagram or TikTok page on my personal real estate platform, a lot of my videos are in historical homes, and because those are some of the most beautiful places that have, people want to see inside those. They're
Absolutely.
so curious what these places look like. St. Louis is one of those cities where, we're like 79 different neighborhoods. We are a city of neighborhoods. You go to other places like Kansas City, even just right across the state. They have their own little pockets and stuff, but they are not as so like pinpointed as our neighborhoods are, and historically different. Like each neighborhood is so vastly different than the rest. And it's seemingly so many neighborhood associations do a very, very, very good job of wanting to keep it that way, and preserving.
They want the character.
They want
to
the
be
character.
preserved. Yeah, absolutely.
And I agree from many standpoints. Some, as long as you can appreciate that. But that's if you are a St. Louisan, you know what those things are. Mm-hmm. So if you're coming into St. Louis, though, and you don't know, hey, there's certain requirements to live in Lafayette Square. These French provincial Second Empire bastions of gorgeous architecture. You don't realize that there are specified rules for.
Maybe your dream is a tutor, but you're not getting that.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, nope, not there.
Not there.
You're buying in the wrong neighborhood.
You know, Northampton, Southampton, or if for instance you're looking to get into the mid-century modern space, Crestwood and University City have a lot of those. Some parts of South and Northampton, even a little bit, have those, but. A lot of people outside of the city don't know that. But I'll tell you what, there is, if you live in St. Louis, you know what those pockets are, for sure.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like I said, the restrictions in those neighborhoods. And if it's already deemed historic, you're not going to be changing much at all. As far as the house itself.
Say, stuck on the outside, stuck on the inside, like where do you generally get where you have to stay in a lane?
When we did like the tax credit work back in the day, I mean, those I was renovating back in the day, buying two families and turning them into condos and things like that, and it was anything past the front room. So you couldn't change the look of when you come in. If the stairs and the hallway was there, that's not changing, and that front room doesn't change. Front windows had to be specific. Anything else, then you were allowed to do.
So you could do side windows different. Front windows have to match the more or less.
Yeah, it's all
facade.
front facing.
Yep.
Yeah, facade. Yeah, exactly. But there are, certain areas around the city where you have infill projects. You see a lot of these modern. Contemporary homes being built, say, Botanical Heights or area around the Grove, so Forest Park Southeast. You see a lot of these contemporary homes being built, these skinny, these skinny 2 stories. What rules are there around that, right? Well, who knows what those are in certain neighborhoods? Like we know, but it
right.
You might say, well, why are they allowed to build this? And there's sometimes you can get permission from neighborhood associations as a builder to do that, but you have to get that permission.
Do something different. So in a nutshell, like buying a lot, a tear down, for example, if you're in a historic area, you've got to really be alert. You probably are doing that on purpose, though. If you're wanting to be in that area, you're wanting a certain look. But in a nutshell, even from scratch, you're going to be having to stay in a lane or otherwise follow some rules.
Mm-hmm. It also matters like how many parcels you've bought. If you're going to do a district of these houses, they might be more apt to approve you. They might write a variance to do so.
Because you were going to have a group that looked the same, it follows the thought. Because you'll notice, because this is, if you like architecture at all and you're around, you can tell areas where a builder built a group of homes. Let's go back 60, 70, 80 years ago. It's like, that was the same builder. And you go 2 blocks down, there was a different builder, even in areas. And they're similar looking, but you can just tell by the styling that somebody had developed that plot out.
Yeah, even in University City, for instance, there's lots of very large 3,000 square foot brick homes, 3 stories, that are the exact same homes, just flipped or mirrored.
Totally.
And so when people go out to the suburbs of like St. Charles County, for instance, it's like every house is the same. It's like it was in U City too, over 100 years ago.
Right. That's funny. That's exactly right.
It's exactly right.
Sure. Okay. So if a house is listed historic, then my worry would have been, oh my gosh, like I've got another set of rules that are going to apply. It's still basically what you were saying earlier is that basically in St. Louis it still applies to front of the home. Maybe a front room area, stairs, front facade. Is that generally throughout the country that way, or what does that look like?
Yeah. Do you want to go?
I would think yes. I haven't actually.
I guess you're not. You have your license.
I've never researched it, but I would think it would be very similar.
suppose.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine New York or Chicago, how that might. We were just up there too. The architecture is amazing in Chicago. They pulled something off up there. They really did.
It's out of this world. It's
It
what
is
St.
something.
Louis could have become if we invested in train infrastructure rather than steamboat infrastructure.
Well, we did have a big river here. I'm with you on that.
Trains worked out
Things
better.
I think
Yeah,
about, the
they
trains
did.
worked out
Yeah.
better.
But yeah, it's pretty much all across America. It's still front-facing, front room. It is also important for alleyways. For instance, in some portions of the city of St. Louis and Chicago, for instance, alleyways, you have to sometimes have brick structures in certain parts of the city. And in certain parts, you can still build your wooden frame, vinyl siding, or garage ports and whatnot. In Chicago, for instance, you were just there. They also, on top of a lot of their garage ports or garages in general, they put decks. And like that's a very, very common thing that has been done in the past. And you don't even have to have like a variance to do that. It's so common. But here in St. Louis, you do. But yeah.
Interesting. So the city, how's it holding up? I mean, you guys are both selling property in the city. How are we doing? Is it going to make it? It's funny you brought up Chicago. We were up there. I said the same thing. I'm not sure. Like you look at the downtown area the way it is in Chicago. It sprawls along the lake. I mean, you really are kind of landlocked coming in the South St. Louis city unless you were going to just tear stuff down. I mean, North St. Louis city is similar. I mean, it's kind of landlocked the way that it is to even blow up a big urban area. And that's just, I want to say, the logistics in my mind for this city to blow up like a Chicago or some other large downtown area. But how's the city holding up in general? We talked about property values, but you should probably take this in turn. So, David, if you'd go first, I mean, are you kind of bullish on St. Louis? I mean, you got a podcast that's St. Louis, or are you worried? I mean, where are you kind of at in your mind with it?
I think I'm probably the most positive person about the future of St. Louis.
Okay.
I see it on the daily. I worked downtown for a very long time. I was there every single day. And yes, some people are like, well, you weren't there at night. And it's like, oh, no, I was. Don't worry. I certainly was.
I was there.
We've got a great project going on right now. It's like a $4 million plan improving walkability and street safety from the Americas Center at the Dome all the way down to Busch Stadium along 7th Street.
Oh, cool.
And that's going to make downtown a lot more walkable and pedestrian friendly. Yeah. There are more people living downtown currently than there has been in pretty much the entire 21st century so far. We're renovating buildings at a huge pace. People are moving into the central corridor, all the way from Clayton all the way to downtown along that 4064 at a greater rate than, again, we've seen at that 21st century. Our population as a whole, as a region, has pretty much just held steady. Mm-hmm. I'm not too worried about population growth. I'm worried about quality of life growth. Yeah. And that's something we talk about on Overarching. And we think it's headed in a really good direction. For real estate wise, with the NGA site, for instance, on the north side in North City, should create some ideas in some developers' brains to have infill, and infill is always good. We have a whole idea of like, is this gentrification or not? Well, we don't need to go into that. But I think infill is good. Like all the way around, infill is a good thing, and I think the NGA site is going to do that. And then the possible expansion of the Jefferson line, the streetcar going from Fairground Park all the way down to Chippewa. I think it's going to be. I am.
Yeah, you sound stoked on it. I'm glad I asked. Yeah,
talk
that's great.
talk like circles around this.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I am pumped.
This could have been the show, basically.
The future.
Yeah, that's
Louis.
great. No, that's great.
That's what our show Overarching is about.
It's hard to feel that when you're not involved like you are. I mean,
I'm a little too involved.
No, that's not a bad thing. It's a compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate
You're welcome,
that.
of course.
Thank you.
So, I mean, your thoughts? How are the neighborhoods
I was
that
just
you're
thinking as
working
we're even
holding up?
talking like people moving down in the city. So St. Louis was just late, right? So, they didn't really start doing it until probably mid to late 90s. Got really into it early 2000s. Well, then the market crashed.
Yeah.
And it stopped. Builders stopped building. Builders went out of business. Other people came in and gobbled them up, waited for the markets to turn. So it's taken a while to get it back and going. And I haven't done a lot in the city in years. I mean, I did in early 2000s. as far as even clients buying condos and whatnot down there and doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we were just late developing it. And there's still a ton of land down there and a ton of property that can be. And I think that every neighborhood goes through cycles. You're going to get some pretty staple ones that don't, just because of the sheer value of the homes. But over time, as neighborhoods deteriorate, people do come in and develop it, and it turns back over. Some neighborhoods take longer than others, but
They see an opportunity,
yeah.
and some way that to build value for themselves or whatever it is that they're doing, and plus fall in love with an area or architecture or whatever, and next thing you know, it's a gem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts with the people, though, right? I mean, the people need to take pride in where they live and pride in their homes and how they do things and how it presents, and that changes one house at a time.
We talk about that a lot on our show too. Is St. Louis loves to poo-poo its own city, right? St. Louisans love to talk bad about their own city, and that needs to change. I think that starts. That's the catalyst, right? It starts here. Your perception of where you live really changes the scope and the landscape of where you live too.
It would feel better if on a Saturday, I mean, like when you walk in downtown Chicago on a Saturday, because I just did that, I don't know, 2 days ago, and you're up, and it feels like you're at an amusement park. I mean, there are so many people out, and there's so much to see, and there's so much to do. Or you go out for the evening, and it's not one rooftop bar, it's everywhere you go, and the place is packed, and the music's going, and so I don't want to jump on the anti-St. Louis bandwagon, but it's it's a unique experience we could have, and it's a little disappointing that we're not leveraging it. I mean, we got the beautiful river that runs through the town and a lot to offer, and it feels like if we're behind, like we're dragging our feet. So I don't want to be the anti-St. Louis guy, but I'm saying, like, come on, St. Louis, like step it up a bit, like
I hear you. I think there's a lot of things that it starts with. Real estate's huge, one of those things, but I think Chicago does a great job of investing in non car-centric infrastructure, and that's what St. Louis invests a lot of its money in. Is car-centric
$75 a night to park there. I can tell you that.
Oh man, see, that's why they encourage
so I don't
people
want the
to
cars
take
down
the CTA,
there.
right?
That's exactly right. Like,
Take
don't
the CTA,
do it.
take the buses. They'd encourage you to take public transit.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm bullish on the north-south line. Anything that gives people the freedom of movement. Some people can't afford cars.
Yeah,
they're expensive to get around. So.
Yes, they are.
Chicago does a good job of that, for sure.
We Ubered everywhere when we were down there too, and it's things like that. When cars are automated, that's going to change things,
for sure.
And then we don't have to park. It's going to change things too. It's going to be interesting in the next 100 years to see what happens in this country and what can happen in areas when, like you said, the car thing. Think about all the parking lots downtown that wouldn't have to be parking lots. It could be parks or anything. You could put restaurants in.
I've got lots of ideas.
Yeah. Well, that's.
Well, you're younger, so you've got time to actually make that change.
Oh, no, we're never going to say that.
I won't be involved in that from an age
I was going to
perspective.
say, you're talking about 2008 and the crash, and I was talking about, I've done a lot of research about downtown in 2008, and St. Louis was hit harder than any other like Rust Belt city in America. St. Louis was crushed by that crash.
Yep.
Whereas other cities bounced back a lot better after that, and St. Louis did not. But I was like 17.
Yeah,
We had
in 2008. Just there you go.
Not as consequential for you yet.
So my brokerage firm, we had literally a whole ground up building that we listed the condos on. I can't remember the name of it, but it was going to be like the first all glass one down there. It was blue something possibly. Apologize, but yeah, I mean, we started working on that right as things were crashing, and then it crashed, and they just folded it up. I mean, you can't do it.
Yeah,
couldn't pre-sell enough units to get it done.
Because AT&T saw the writing on the wall. They left the tower at Chestnut in 2007, and so they got out right before the crash.
Yeah.
Well, not great for the city, but hopefully we figure a way, to bring it back.
I hope we can avoid another crash.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that would be. I always look at like straight values, right? So what I went through, I mean, at the time of the crash, my house would have been, it lost about 20% in value. And now it's made that back and a good chunk more just because of the way the market's going now. And you just got to feel, I mean, you've got clients even so like Webster Groves where I'm at. Like you had said, like the builder that builds, like the Jones Company was the company back in the day. Like they built all of the homes, like South Elm, Glendale, like over by the rec center there. It's like every home is the same. But there are some of those homes that are 1,000 square feet selling for $400,000. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, back before the market crash, I would have these conversations when they were $200,000, and my comment was, how much do you think that people will spend on this house? Like
$4.
Well, now, so to all of the people that I talked out of that, 20 years ago, I was wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I'm again, as a person who loves where I live and loves homes and still, again, plays in real estate to some extent, it's there's got to be a change.
Yeah.
It's got to come. I mean, hopefully it's not like that. I mean, hopefully, again, we're not doing, I mean, that was more bad loans and increased fake values than it was the fact that
underlying
people just
value
want to
was-
buy
yeah.
houses because they have more money, which is kind of where I think we're at now.
Yeah,
Right?
and
I mean-
to maybe have a go into that a little bit deeper, that I think viewers and listeners might find very useful. So other parts of the country, say like Austin, Texas, or Tampa and West Coast Florida, areas of the country that saw like 40 to 50% increase over a like 1 to 2 year span of home values, they're going to lose home values immensely, right? You see these increases that just go bonkers in that amount of time. St. Louis didn't have that type of 40%, 50% increase. We're lucky to be in one of those cities, like Nashville, for instance, another one, that saw massive home value increases. Yes, I'm sure we'll see very similar percent-wise going down. I don't think there's going to be a big crash like there was in 07, 08, 09. But there's definitely going to be some type of leveling.
Reset, maybe, or just
maybe a reset.
Yeah.
But St. Louis won't be affected as much as other cities. Now, certain parts of St. Louis will certainly be affected. Very desirable areas for school districts or something like that will be affected with higher home values.
Yeah.
When you have higher home values,
They're going to have more
course.
of a base, or they're for one reason or another, more firmness.
For sure. But I think
our-
St. Louis is lucky.
I think our warning, like right for you, is every day being a realtor, the warning will be when you're the only contract written and you get it at asking price. Like they'll be like the first time, like it happens like a couple times. Like, all right, things are changing. This is it. Where's everybody at?
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks a lot for the conversation. I
Yeah,
really
this was fun.
appreciate it. Yeah, I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and it was fun. It was interesting for sure. I feel like I learned a lot. Hopefully, our viewers find something in there that they find interesting. I mean, a home is generally the biggest asset folks are going to have, and I'd say you almost could say somewhat universally is something that people aspire to have.
For sure.
And so it's kind of exciting for you guys to be in that business, but exciting for us to help service that stuff. So you want to do any shameless plugs on overarching or anything like that on the way out, or just to say goodbye? Yeah.
I'm happy to be on this show. This was fun. Anytime you guys want to talk real estate or just St. Louis in general, I'm very glad to do so. We'll have you on overarching sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We can talk about the state of the city and fun state of affairs of where things are going. But that's what the overarching show is about. It's about the city of St. Louis, and it's kind of like a comedy news show.
Yeah.
Is kind of how you would put it. So maybe like a Jon Stewart, John Oliver kind of a thing. How they just make fun of the news, because that's one of the big reasons we created the show is, Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 30, they're owned by people that aren't from St. Louis.
Yeah,
so we wanted a show about St. Louis, made by St. Louisans, that kind of poked fun at itself, but also looked really, really excitedly towards the future.
It's awesome.
We'd love to have you on sometime.
Appreciate it.
That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing
Thanks
that.
for coming.
All right, St. Louis. Make sure to check out David on Overarching, and we'll see you around town.